Grass Valley. Typically, to get a big crowd like this, we have to put a big sign up that says free beer. But obviously, this is a topic that is of utmost importance to people. I'm Lisa Swarthout. I'm the mayor of Grass Valley, and I'm here to welcome you all to this meeting this evening with our insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara. We are so pleased that he has come here to answer all your questions and give us information about what's going on with our fire insurance. Obviously, an extremely important topic in our community. So with that, I get the next elected official up here, my very good friend, former mayor of Grass Valley, Dan Miller, District 3 Supervisor. Thank you all again for coming.
Lisa and I, we have history. I want to tell you how proud I am and impressed by the turnout here this evening for an issue that faces our entire community. Nevada County, when we have to show up, we show up. And I know that this the crowd here this evening or this afternoon is anxious to hear what Commissioner Lara has to say, the information that he has. I want to thank his staff for working so closely with county staff and the CEO's office and senior board analysts Jeffrey Thorsby and Jen Tamo, Elise Strickler, and Taylor Wolf. Without their coordination and cooperation, it would be hard to put an event like this on. And this isn't the only place. There's overflow at the Rood Center. And so what you're seeing here, they're seeing over at the Rood Center, live streaming on TV. Thanks to Commissioner Lara and his staff for addressing this insurance issue and making it a priority for his department. This is a big deal for our community. It's a big deal to have the state insurance commissioner here personally to listen to us and to help us deal with a problem that we're all facing. You know, I've been meeting with many of my constituents, neighborhoods, businesses, and I'm part of a regional local government ad hoc committee that specifically is dealing with home insurance and the availability that's affecting most of us. We know there is shared frustration. We know there is confusion. We know there's anger. We recognize this, but there are no easy answers because it's taken a long time for us to get to where we are, and now we're going to have to face it. There is a saying that words are cheap. Well, Commissioner Lara is not here to simply deliver words. He is here to help us, to help our community get through a crisis that has been brewing for quite a long time. And we are here to listen to his plan and his strategy that he is creating with his staff. I've got to applaud him for being as proactive as he is and going to different communities across the state and meeting with the neighbors, meeting with the residents, and meeting with the homeowners who are being non-renewed or seeing their insurance premiums rise dramatically. And there's really no blame here. I mean, it's been created for a long, long time. Don't get mad at your local insurance agents. Please, it's not their fault. And they're also friends of mine. As a community, we are already dealing with the problem of vegetation management. So we are working with the Fire Safe Council, we're working with Office of Emergency Services, working with CAL FIRE to mitigate those problems, along with our fire districts. Firewise communities are being certified around the county as our residents harden their neighborhoods by eliminating ladder fuels. We now have WUIs to deal with. And a WUI is a wildland-urban interface. It's a new term that you're going to be hearing a lot about. And what a WUI is, it's a forested open space that borders our neighborhoods, that borders our residential areas. And WUIs can affect your insurability. These WUIs impact your insurability, and we need a strategy to lessen their effect on homeowners. We are working with CAL FIRE on the Ponderosa fire break to give our fire departments an opportunity to stop a fire before it becomes catastrophic. We have a lot more to do, and it will take all of us to get the job done. So with that, I know that wasn't really warm and fuzzy, but it's a reality that we're living with right now in Nevada County and across the state. I'd like now to introduce Supervisor Ed Schofield, District 2.
Well, Dan did an exceptional job, and I will say we're here tonight to listen to our state insurance commissioner. So I think that's all I really need to do is say thank you for being here, Ricardo, and welcome to Grass Valley, and the stage I give to you.
We got it. First and foremost, before I begin, I want to take the time to thank you all for being here. This only, again, validates the problem that we've been hearing about and that our department has been struggling with for so many years now. I want to thank you for being here, and this is my 9th or 10th visit to rural California to meet with several county leaders to address and try to strategize how we address the issue of non-renewals in these beautiful parts of our state. I try to do my best to wear my boots, not bad for an LA kid, but you know, people said, no, you're still too urban to fit in. So I get it, but I try. I wanted to tell you that since I have taken helm of the department as your California Insurance Commissioner, we've had to deal with the immediate impact of the fires. We have then had record floods in the Guerneville area, and we have been dealing now with the earthquakes in Ridgecrest in California, which is a way of life for us Californians, right? And unfortunately, it's something that continues to be exacerbated through climate change and the issues that we need to face, and our issues that you are living with every day and are seeing firsthand. We haven't had such extreme weather like this ever before. And so we're seeing the confluence of these issues now really taking shape and affecting the availability and affordability of insurance in your communities. What I want to do is provide you with a presentation that really is an amalgamation of what we've been hearing for now 7 months since I took this office, and try to encapsulate all the issues that we have been investigating and that we have seen, and give you what we think is an appropriate way forward that we need to work with our legislative colleagues and our governor to get us to give us the authority and to approve some of these critical measures that are going to be important for our California consumers to be able to still have options for insurance and be able to protect ourselves from these non-renewals, which we know are happening. So we are going to begin. So essentially, the Department of Insurance recognizes that homeowners, especially folks in the WUI, as our supervisor talked about, are experiencing non-renewals. We in the department have seen a 600% increase in complaints on non-renewals since 2010. So we're tracking this information. We've also seen premium increases, more than 100 rate increase filed. These are what insurance companies file with us to adjust their rates. And usually when I say adjust their rates, means they want a rate increase on your policy. We also are seeing that there's a lack of availability in insurance in the traditional homeowners and renters market in these communities in the WUI. And we also know, as a lot of you already know, that the FAIR plan is not a comprehensive traditional homeowners insurance plan. That is a bare bone policy that does not cover sufficiently. So we recognize these are some of the major issues that we're seeing. So what is driving this increase? We've had 10 of the 20 most destructive wildfires in California's history have occurred over the last 3+ years. And that's important because you're going to see that that is what the insurers look at. They look at your recent history of that community to adjust their rates. We also know that as risk increases, the cost of insurance is increasing and the availability of coverage is decreasing. Again, I know these are things that you already know, but I wanted just to point out that we recognize that. And insurers consider the very recent past to underwrite and determine rates for every near future, which to date we've estimated with $25 billion in losses for the insurance industry only in 2017, 2018. That doesn't take into account 2019. So let's talk about residential underwriting and new school and old school, right? And I'm sorry for covering folks, but I'm going to try to walk around. The old school way is they would look, the insurance company would come in and assess your property, right? They would look at your defensible space. They would see what you've done to harden your home. That is, it would insurers traditionally evaluate each home based on almost entirely its own characteristics and its own condition. Today that has changed. The use of technology has shifted, and now we see that homes must first pass through an evaluation filter based on satellite imagery. So this is what they look at now, right? No longer are they going down to the granular level to look at your actual property. So and the satellite imagery region evaluates slope, fuel load, and type of fuel and access. I have to say, the department needs the tools to be able to validate this data, which we don't have now. So this is why we hear, well, I was a 4 and all of a sudden now I'm a 6. They haven't even come and inspected, and they've dropped me anyways, right? This is the story we hear over and over. So I want to be clear in terms of what we have as tools to address non-renewals as a department now. I have this slide because I want you to know what we currently have as tools I feel are very insufficient to protect consumers. We know that the insurers before they non-renew you have to give eligibility guidelines for the new policies, and renewals must have an objective relation to the relative loss of exposure. They must not be able to unfairly discriminate, right? That is in statute that we use to make sure that they're not discriminating when they are non-renewing folks. We know that the insurer has to provide 45-day notice renewal, which you all are familiar with that. You also understand that the insurers have to provide the applicant or insured with specific reason for the declination or non-renewal, and we know what that reason is, right? Fire risk. That is what they're using to non-renew you. So a couple changes that we worked on. We also know that a minimum of 2 annual renewals are required for those that have had total loss after a fire, when it's declared a disaster by the governor, and 1 year of continued coverage for homes in areas within or adjacent to the wildfire. That is to give people appropriate time. We know 45 days are not enough. And I did legislation when I was in the Senate to give an additional year of guaranteed renewal for those homes that did not suffer total loss, but are in the area adjacent to the fire, because we know that even if you didn't have a total loss, or you didn't have a change in risk, you were still being non-renewed. And so we wanted to at least give those folks an additional year of protection to make the appropriate changes and planning for you and your family. So what all these issues essentially conflate to, and what we've realized as a department over the years, is that the underinsurance and non-renewals continue to be a massive problem in the WUI. We know that the 45-day notice is not enough and is insufficient. We know it doesn't take into consideration an individual's tenure or claims history. Many of you have been with the same insurance company for over 30 years, and without explanation, you get dropped. They don't take into account any tenure or any time that you've been with this particular company, and there's no consideration for pre-fire mitigation, right? You hear that time and time again, that you've done everything that you've been asked for to harden your home, but yet you still get dropped. And even if there's no change to your individual risk of your property, you still get non-renewed. And we also know that there's no clear statewide standards for community-wide mitigation. And that becomes very important, because as we know that the insurance companies are utilizing technology to do regional maps, we don't have, as a state, statewide standards to say, hey, this is what we need to do as a community to be able to lower our risk so that we get the traditional insurance companies to come back into the market. And so what we're proposing, and I'll highlight it a little later, is we're proposing that we actually get together with the insurance companies, first responders, with the community to actually flush out what appropriate community-wide mitigation standards would look like. So there is a clear understanding from everybody on a community level what needs to be done to lower risk. It also allows us to be much more proactive as opposed to reactionary after a fire occurs, so that we can demonstrate that we're as a community working together. What currently exists now is essentially a patchwork of different programs throughout different counties. But even then, you still get non-renewal. So this is why we want to bring the insurance companies together, bring the first responders, the communities, to work on a community mitigation plan that is still going to allow for some flexibility to allow us to make sure we lay the plan over specific communities, and it's still fluid enough to be able to allow us to meet the uniqueness of that community. But at least as a state, we have come together and said, these are statewide standard mitigation measures that we've approved, that we put in statute, that clearly have the input of the insurance industry, so that we can all say, wait, we've done this as a community, this is what's in statute of what we need to do, or what we've agreed on with the insurance companies and the experts, so that we can lessen the risk, which is what we want to do ultimately in these communities. We want to lessen the overall risk, not just focus on the parcel, but as a community, what we need to do, which also informs our local leaders, which thank you, by the way, for hosting us today, informs them of what we can do as a state, and it gives them a proper roadmap of what needs to happen in the particular community. We also understand that the FAIR plan is completely insufficient, and that if we actually want a plan that's actually fair, is that it's going to have to be a plan that has higher limits and that has more comprehensive coverage. So you don't, for those of you that have the FAIR plan, do not have to then go out and get additional coverage to be able to build out enough coverage to cover your entire property. It makes no sense to have a bare bones policy that you as a consumer are going to eventually having to pay administrative fee on top of administrative fees because you keep having to buy additional coverage. We want a FAIR plan that's actually going to be fair and give you comprehensive coverage. So if it is the insurer of last resort, that you only need one policy, and that's going to be the FAIR plan with appropriate coverage and a more comprehensive product. We also understand that many folks that live in the WUI communities are folks with fixed incomes, are people who either have decided to retire in these beautiful communities that no longer have the earning potential that they've had to be able to sustain the changes and the upgrades that need to happen in these communities so that we can be better protected. We also know many people have been pushed out of the urban core, and that's a reality. And we also know that the insurance coverage that we have now did not take into consideration the convergence of all these issues that we are starting to see now, with extreme heat, extreme wet weather, with the issues that we're seeing around lands that are federal lands that are not being tended to. These are all a confluence of issues that, weren't considerations back when you first moved here. This is the new reality that we're living in, and hence we need to update our protections so that they take into consideration this extreme weather and the confluence of issues that you now find yourself in that are leading to non-renewals in your community. We also know, and we've seen this time and time again, inaccurate coverage, your coverage A, which is your dwelling coverage, those inaccurate estimates are leading to and contributing to underinsurance. And so many people have come to me and said, I thought I was fully covered, I kept paying my policy, assuming that I was fully covered, but I've never reviewed my coverage A. I didn't get an estimate once a renewal estimate once my policy was renewed. Nobody came out to inspect my policy to see if I was properly covered, or there was maybe not a cost of living adjustment. And so we see that over and over again, and that's leading to not only underinsurance, but people assuming that they're fully covered and after a fire can no longer rebuild to what they thought they could have. And so we need to work together to make sure that that the onus is not just on you, the consumer, to understand what your coverage A is. We want to put some onus on the insurance companies to have to notify you, come out and inspect, and give you an updated estimate, and then you make the appropriate decision for you and your family. But leaving it all on you to understand your insurance coverage is unfair. Because I'll tell you, when we're going through your individual, the amount of anxiety that I see when I ask people, do you understand your coverage, is real. And people just want to sign, assume they're covered, and no longer want to think about their coverage. Well, we know that folks in your community, folks that have gone through these fires, do not have that luxury. And so we need to put some of that onus on the insurance companies to help you understand what your coverage is. So we also have done our homework after meeting with so many of you and having our department come out year after year. And we know that the best way to increase availability and affordability of insurance is to decrease the overall risk for the entire community. And you know this already, but I just want to make sure you see it one more time. I can't say this enough, is, this includes looking at where we build and investing in pre-disaster prevention and mitigation efforts. That includes looking at our building codes, fire-resistant modifications. We have to look at our land use policy and planning, community-wide abatement or mitigation measures, defensible space, enhanced infrastructure, and wildfire sensors, right? These, I think, we can build upon this as we continue to look at the nuances of each particular community. But essentially, these are the key issues that we see we need to continue to work on together, as with our local electeds, with our community leaders, and with our state legislators. So this gives you essentially what we're looking at in terms of a path forward. The left hand, the right hand, or to your left list here gives you what we are currently working on and what is within our power as we move to address these issues. Again, highlighting another aspect of the bill that I did last year, now is a requirement for insurance companies to report their fire loss data by wildfire risk score, protection class, and zip code to create a more credible rating data for us. We couldn't collect that data before. Now we are collecting this data in statute, looking at and require the insurers to report this fire loss data when it comes to how are they assessing the risk score, protected class, and zip codes to be able to inform us where this is happening. Before, to date, we were just looking at, through hearsay, we're hearing that this is happening. We are hearing that they're not renewing these communities. This now gives us the data, this is the data we just released, correct, staff? Oh, the last point, okay. We're also now requesting detailed information and ensure rate filing. So when they come in with the rate filing, they specifically have to tell us how wildfire risk scores are affecting these rates, right? We didn't have that before. And for increased transparency, and so we can get increased transparency on how homeowner wildfire risk scores are affecting their premiums. We didn't have that information before, now we're collecting that. And we just released an updated, non-renewal data to reflect the impact of the 2017-28 fire season, which we made that public now, which essentially says what you already know, that non-renewals are occurring in the WUI at higher rates. Oh, let me go back. And this is what we are going to be asking for the governor and the legislature to take into account as we continue meeting with them and hopefully get them to approve some of these policies during their legislative session. One, we want to make sure that insurers write or renew homes that are hardened and are located in wildfire mitigated communities. Essentially saying that you cannot not renew somebody who has hardened their home and has done absolutely everything to protect themselves and are in wildfire mitigated communities. Now, that would be a first for us. We don't have the authority as a department to force insurance companies to write in a specific community. We don't have that authority. We're asking for that authority, and particularly in homes that have been hardened and have met the wildfire mitigation standards set forth by your county or by whatever program you're abiding to. We want insurance companies to have to write insurance there. Second, to address the underinsurance issue with complete replacement cost estimates in writing to you annually, and the insurance coverage for building code upgrades and to comply with building codes. What's essentially what we're saying is we want your insurance to help cover building code upgrades, to help you pay and help you lessen and incentivize you all to continue to build up to standards and to do the mitigation that you need that currently is not included in your policy. That is essentially what we're asking the legislature to give us the authority to make sure that your insurance products cover the upgrades. We also want to make sure that extended living expenses, which are ALE, to homeowners who suffer partial loss of a home or suffer from causes due to fire damage of essential infrastructure. This is very important, especially for folks out in Paradise who you might not have suffered a loss or a partial loss due to the fire, but you are not entitled to additional living expenses through your insurance because they say essentially you could move in back to your property. But how are you going to move into your property if you have no water, if you have no energy, no electricity? Or how about if your septic tank melted and now there's an environmental hazard in your property? You can't move back realistically into your home. So we want additional living expenses covered for those homeowners as well that may not have lost but are adjacent to a fire or in a fire zone that miraculously the fire skipped over. We know, as I said before, the 45-day period for you to get notified is ridiculous. We want 180 days advance notice to policyholders. Once we want the 45-day with an additional 180-day notice, essentially around 6 months, of a policy of non-renewal. We think that's more appropriate given the fact that we're facing unprecedented climate change and extreme weather. We want people to have more time before they get non-renewed to make and understand what their choices are and to call our department so that we can help you assess what are the best options for you and your family. So those 45 days we know is completely not enough. And we want to allow more flexibility to policyholders in submitting their contents and inventory claims to insurers. To me, it is unfathomable to ask people to give you an exact inventory of contents after your home has burned to the ground. And you're not only trying to assess what just happened, trying to understand the trauma that you just went through, but yet your insurance company is still going to force you to go through a detailed list of contents. It is inhumane. And we want more flexibility to say, hey, if, for example, give us 80%, give us 95%, give us some flexibility so that we are able to make that decision for your family and yourself. And then after, if you want to claim the 100%, you do the detailed inventory. But we want to allow some flexibility for you all to give you an opportunity to just figure out how we can be more flexible and not be so stringent and rigid on this content. We want to seek authority to verify these fire risk underwriting scores and models that are used by insurers. These are all private, independent contractors that we have no authority to look into their black box and see how are they justifying these new risk score models. What is the data they're using? So that we can at least verify the accuracy. Have you really gone into the granular level to look at what the community has done to mitigate before you non-renew or just use this map, this satellite map that really doesn't tell you really much. It just looks at the slope and the topography and the geography of the region to determine what the fire risk score is going to be. Lastly, we want the FAIR plan to actually be a FAIR plan. We want to increase the policy limits under the FAIR plan and the guarantee limit to actually make it an actual comprehensive coverage for you all. And if we do all this mitigation, if we've done all these policy changes that give the department much more hearsay and the authority to protect our consumers, that even if they still non-renew us and the fair plan is the option, that the fair plan is actually a comprehensive plan that won't then force you to go in and start to get additional coverage to wrap around your bare bones policy, which to me, it not only increases the cost, but you keep paying these additional administrative fees to insurance companies to give you what should be really one policy under one company. So, these are the proposals that we are working in the legislature and that we're asking our governor to help us with. How do we respond to incidents? And I just want to remind you, after we saw the data, after we heard from your county and city officials, and we did our own research, we understood that the non-renewals and affordability was a massive issue in the WUI. So instead of us waiting for you to come to Sacramento or waiting for you to call the hotline so that we can assist you, this is why we're here today. Today is our first community strike team meeting to address non-renewals. And by the show of and participation clearly demonstrates that not only your local electeds were correct, we were correct in assuming that this is a major problem in these communities. So we are going to be coming to you. And we have our experts here to answer your question, and we're prepared to stay as long as we have to either get your information, open a case, be able to have that conversation with you, with our department professionals that are going to be here and help answer some of these questions in detail. And we have cards. We will be, I have to say, we're going to be in Placer County Wednesday, August 28th in the Auburn Fairgrounds. We're going to be in the city of Sonora City, Thursday, August 29th at the Opera Hall at 6. So that is our commitment from a department and from me, that we are actually coming to the communities. We're not going to wait for you to call us. We're going to come and have those conversations with you. We have the consumer hotline, 1-800-927-4387, which I know it's a 1-800 number, and I know that gives people some pause. Are we going to leave a message? Are we going to not get a call back? We actually have live people Monday through Friday answering calls, being able to walk you through what your options are, and in the slight chance that you actually, and we'll put this up in a bigger slide, in the slight chance that you have to leave a message, our callback rate is 2 minutes. So we have live people dedicated to making sure that we talk to you and that we open a case and that we follow up. That is what we do, and we have an entire department dedicated to doing that. This hit me after we met with Placer County officials. They did a survey of the residents and said, how many of you have contacted your Department of Insurance after you've been non-renewed? It was like 90% of the people did not know to contact us, and that we had a hotline with actual professional folks being able to give you options. Hence why I said, no, we're not going to wait for people to call. We're actually coming to the community. And this is exactly what we're doing today. These are things that I've done through my authority as insurance commissioner and have sent notices to the insurance companies saying, hey, we need your help and we want you to do the following things. We requested the insurance companies to extend additional living expenses and not to deduct the land value to the survivors of the 2017 wildfires. This is directly impacting the folks from the Santa Rosa fires. Their ALEs is about to expire. Some people have taken them months to even get into their property. That should be taken into consideration before your ALEs run out, and now you're forced to go back to a company where you still can't access or be able to live in that home. So some of the companies have agreed to extend the ALE limit, and some have agreed to not deduct the value of their land when it comes to when folks are trying to buy a home somewhere else or trying to rebuild somewhere else. We've also said We want to make sure that out-of-state adjusters who do not know the consumer protection laws that we have in California, they need to comply with our laws. So they are not giving people wrong information. So they're not making people sign any document in duress, that they understand the protections that we have in California for you all to make that appropriate decision. We've asked that of the insurers. We want expedited claims handling. We've sent a notice urging insurance companies to expedite claims and offer billing grace periods. Again, it's the right thing to do. It's the humane thing to do after people have suffered from these fires. We want to make sure that they have these expedited claims so that you can get back on your feet as quickly as possible. Again, home inventory, urging the insurers to waive the requirements of a home inventory. It is ridiculous to me to ask you to do a home inventory list when your home's burned to the ground. How are you going to do that? And how are you going to do that in due time? And how are you going to be able to do that under the duress of what just happened to you and your family? You know, I'll never forget one of the conversations we had to some of the Paradise survivors. Parents just still did not know how to talk to their children about what just happened. And the fact that their children do not want to go to sleep at night because they're still scared that something's going to happen. So what we did is we dispatched immediately the Department of Mental Health. We dispatched the Department of Social Services to help us, to have people just have somebody there to listen to them, to have a conversation, and try to seek out some sort of way of how do we move forward from this massive catastrophe that just happened, and how do we have that conversation with our children, with our loved ones, with our seniors. We've done that at the disaster response sites as well. So these are notices that I've sent as insurance commissioner asking the insurance companies to do this and work with us. Again, enforcement efforts. We have in our department some very, very talented law enforcement officers, investigators that go after insurance fraud. That is their job. And we have them available to you as well when you call our number to make sure if you feel that you have been a victim of fraud or that there's anything fraudulent happening in the community that you see when it comes to insurance, we have folks that can take down your information and we can do the investigation and do the investigatory work to make sure that, you know, that's not happening in your community. And that doesn't just go, by the way, that the law enforcement unit isn't just for homeowner insurance, but if you're a senior, if you see something that's happening just in general with fraud and insurance, it could be automobile, it could be people taking advantage of our seniors, trying to defraud them from their life insurance, from their savings, from their anything that has to do with fraud and insurance. We will investigate it and we will make sure that, you know, we get back to folks on the outcomes of these investigations once they're complete and made public. We, of course, have our teams ready and dispatched after a massive event. We've done that in Guerneville, we did it after the earthquake, we've done it after the fires. Once we get a green light from first responders that it's okay, we're going to be there to make sure that we are answering your questions, and more importantly, we're advising you on what next steps should be. And so we encourage folks that after a disaster, not to sign anything, not to commit to anything, to call our number, and we'll be able to assess you and give you the proper guidance in terms of what would be an appropriate decision for you. And of course, these are all individual. These are all dependent on your individual case. So talking one-on-one with somebody from the department is highly encouraged, as opposed to just trying to figure it out on your own. We want to be able to help you. This is our number. This is our website where you can file a claim as well. And again, we wanted to come to the community, give you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of issues in the WUI. I want to thank you for being here. We have some questions, and of course, we don't have time for all the questions that have been written on the cards, but we are going to collect those, and we're going to have our staff get back to you. If that means on an individual basis, we'll do that. But we are also going to open it up for questions and allow our deputy commissioner, Tony Signorelli, who is the head of our market conduct, consumer services, to help answer some of the questions and get into some of the details if we can. And then also have our special counsel, Joe Lauscher, who has both are veterans of the department and have assisted people through so many of, unfortunately, these fires and catastrophic events. Again, I wanted to come here and thank you for listening to us. We want you to know that we're here. We have our entire team here to help answer these questions. And Joel and Tony, come up, and we will we'll be answering some of the questions that were written, and we're going to continue to collect some of the questions. And of course, again, like I said, our staff will be here to make sure we're answering your questions as we move forward. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I know it takes a lot of your busy schedule to come here, but we really appreciate your attendance and appreciate, we know we have some folks in the overflow room as well that we're going to also try to get their questions answered. Thank you so much. And we have staff